This material is made available to you by or on behalf of the University of Melbourne under Section 113P of the Copyright Act 1968. It may be subject to copyright. For more information, visit the University Copyright website.
That's sharing okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Well, we might kick off because it is a couple of minutes past 12. So thank you everyone for joining online today for the Australia meeting. I'm just going to make sure that there aren't people in the waiting room. Hang on, yep, we'll admit someone. So welcome. Thank you guys. This is lunchtime in Melbourne, but I realise that it is at a interesting range of times for everyone across the globe, particularly Matt, who this is 1 a.m. in the morning, so thank you. I've got a couple of things to cover today. So the first one that I've had sent through was just promotion of the special issue that will be coming up in Frontiers to the group. So I popped up their information there. This was sent through from Owen. The key things to point out here, and I think this will be of relevance to the group, is, hang on, it's Owen coming in now. I'll just hit the admit button. Is that this has a summary deadline of the 20th of January and a manuscript deadline of the 20th of May. So if people are interested in submitting to the special issue, the contact details are up there. It is exploring things like eye movements. So particularly it's a special issue in eye movement. So I think this will be particularly relevant for this group. Owen, did you want to add anything else to this?
No, I've had a number of inquiries from people who work more in basic science, etc. This is a really open edition from our perspective, and a lot of basic science has direct clinical application as well. If you've got any doubts, by all means, contact me or Kerry or Tim or Sri. Almost we'd accept almost anything that was appropriate and was well written and was a good scientific interest. Unlike a normal journal article, there's actually no limit on the number of articles we can accept, because they'll turn it into a book, so that it'll be based purely on scientific merit, and it'll just go in if it's appropriate.
Okay, great. One of the questions that I did have for both you, Owen, and for the general ISCET group is, do we want to send this around on the ISCET mailing list as well, recognising that this meeting is in the Australia time zone? So we may not be capturing all of the UK members, for example. Are we happy enough to send this through just as a sort of FYI? Yeah, cool. Matt's giving me a thumbs up. You're happy enough if we send that out, just the page I've got up on the screen?
I mean, it's in the public domain now. I mean, it's up on the Frontiers website. So I thought that this particular group would have interest. So I think circulating it to everybody, worldwide would be appropriate. But it's up to the ISCET organisers to make that decision. I can't put anything onto a mailing list.
That's good. So I think we're happy enough to send this around, and that's sort of the feel that I'm getting, but I just wanted to make sure that we've raised that in a meeting.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Love it.
So we will, as an action item, send that around after the meeting. We'll move on to the next item. So the main one that we're here to talk about today is the ISCET clinical eye tracking survey. So this is an update from Gemma, who couldn't be here with us today, but has sent through a couple of slides to talk this one through. The survey was developed with the working group. It has received ethics through the University of Sheffield. The purpose is to characterise the current clinical use of eye trackers internationally, to explore whether there is a need or desire for guidelines to be developed to support good practice for clinical eye tracking. And it's focused specifically on clinical use and not general use or not used purely for research or in animals. So it's focused really on that human clinical eye tracking. We've had responses so far from nystagmus groups, from orthoptics groups, optometry, ophthalmology, neuro-ophthalmology, neuropsychology, visual electrophysiology, and eye tracking manufacturers. But when we were talking about who this should go out to and what the groups we would like to receive responses from, the committee also came up with these groups, and we haven't had responses from these groups yet. So one of the open sort of questions is whether or not people have any distribution ideas for how to get this survey out a little bit further. And I'll kind of open the floor on that for any thoughts.
The one thing I would say in terms of the concussion group, we are doing a fair bit of work in that area at the moment, and it's actually a small group. There's a lot of people who are doing basic concussion work, not particularly looking at eye movements. There are a number of commercial entities that are looking at eye tracking phases, and all honesty, I'm involved with one. They've all built their own system. So I think that they would want to be I don't know if they want to be regulated, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So I don't know whether they'll respond.
I think it would be important to capture that response, though, to say we don't want to be regulated, rather than what's sort of coming through at the moment, which is saying we're lacking guidelines and other things. And part of the discussions, obviously, in the early days of this, we're sort of saying we want to make sure that we're including everything that's currently happening. So we don't want to develop it down one stream and find out that it doesn't work for a particular group of users.
No. My point really was directed at the fact is that it's a relatively small group at the moment, and I'm not quite sure who you would actually send it to in that group. There's not a lot of cohesion and discussion between groups because they're mainly commercial entities competing against each other, rather than being scientific groups that are or clinical groups that are using it at the moment. So I'm not sure how you actually get it out to them. There is yeah, but I don't disagree. I think it's an area where it's actually going to be very important over the next 5 to 10 years. But I'm not sure that you'll get anybody to respond at the moment, or who you'd go to. There's no roof organisation, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, Matt.
I would say that, yeah, but so we do have a long list of organizations that this survey has been sent to. There are a few that are yet to be done. So if there's any gaps in that list in next week, I'm going to send them myself to the rest of those. Under concussion, we've got the International Concussion Society. And there are several manufacturers as well. But if there are any other ideas that you have about organizations we might have missed, then it would be good to add those to the list. So you just let us know. Here I can add them right now. I've got the list in front of me.
There is the Concussion Sports Group, who actually set the standards for clinical examination and who are responsible for developing the scan. But
okay, Concussion Sports Group, did you say?
Concussion in Sports Group. It's an international group, but they've been pretty negative about eye movements. That's the only problem. But they are probably the leading clinical entity for concussion, and it's certainly worth contacting them.
Yeah, they are not on the list at the moment. There are over 100 groups on this list, but that's not one of them. So I'll make sure they're added on and contacted.
Okay.
Yeah, one thought, the Berkeley School of Optometry, they have faculty active in eye tracking, and they also have a clinical activity.
Can you add them, Matt? Do you know specifically
yeah, I've added them.
Contact?
Luke? Yeah,
Luke?
so it'd be Jorge with a J, Jorge, Jorge Otero Milan.
Otero Milan. Yeah, Jorge is already involved in the society actually, so I will
Oh, great.
I'll have a word with him directly. Yeah, okay.
Perfect. Any other thoughts from anyone else online?
Yeah, I'm looking at these like the neurodiversity and reading disability. I was thinking that we could send this to INSAR, which is the International Society for Autism Research, but it's more of a research organization. And I'm kind of not sure if that would be the right venue for something like this, as compared to more of like advocacy groups representing the constituency, individuals with autism, for instance. What are your thoughts about Society for Autism Research as compared to kind of like stakeholder groups?
If they're undertaking clinical applications within that research, I think that's probably worth reaching out, because they would have contacts, I guess, within the clinical space that are undertaking those clinical assessments. That's sort of my thought. I'm open to other people's thoughts, but yeah, it's to make this as wide as possible.
I agree. We're trying to send this to as many people as possible. Under that list, we've currently got the International Neurodiversity Alliance, the Institute of Neurodiversity, College of Optometrists in Vision and Development, and the Autism Biomarkers Consortium for Clinical Trials group. So there are groups similar to that. So could you repeat the name of that one, and I'll make sure it's added to the list? That was Fred.
Sorry.
International Society for Autism Research. Let me dig up that spreadsheet. I keep on losing track of it. What's the title of the spreadsheet again? Sorry.
I'm going to send the link out now in the chat so everyone can see it, because this is part of the work of ISCET. So this is the spreadsheet that the working group is using. Please don't edit this if you're not in the subcommittee, but I think it's helpful for people who are in this call to see this. So if you click on the link there, you'll see there's a list on, and the first column is of all the organizations this is being sent to. And so, yeah, so if you look at that and you think there's anything that's missing, then by all means we can add those.
Should just add a few at the bottom.
Yes, that would be fine. Yeah, if you want to do that now during the call, I would say if you're not in the subcommittee, don't edit this outside of this meeting. But if you want to do that now at the very bottom, then yeah, feel free to add any other societies. I'll then structure them later on and then make sure they're contacted.
Fred is in the committee, the subcommittee, as far as I remember.
Sorry?
Fred is in the subcommittee.
Oh, Fred, yes, Fred is in the subcommittee, yes. Of course, yeah.
The Autism Biomarkers Consortium for Clinical Trials. That's interesting. I'm leading up the eye tracking of that group. So it's kind of it's a group of a group of investigators who are trying to advance this for autism research. Where's that listed? I don't see it in the list.
Sorry, what was the name of that group again?
The Autism Biomarkers Consortium for Clinical Trials.
It is row 51, FNIH Biomarkers Consortium. It says in brackets, Autism Biomarkers Consortium for Clinical Trials.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, so maybe to think about this a little bit. It's a little bit complicated. We can talk offline about it.
Okay.
Yeah, go, Rachel. Sorry.
Hi everyone. I didn't say hi, but I came late a little bit. Now, do we have a deadline for this survey? Because I think also the timing these days, it's kind of like a little bit packed. So maybe if we have more time, I'm sure more people will get to distribute, and also more people get to go for the survey. So do we have any deadlines?
I don't think Gemma has defined a kind of closing date as yet, but the idea would be that once it's been distributed to everybody, and you can see there's still a few gaps in that list, then once it's gone out, then I suppose it should become obvious when responses stop coming in. Because at some point this will then be closed down, and then that will define the ISCET priorities for standard development. But the answer is not really. There isn't a specific cutoff date yet.
So is it that we distribute them out, or is it that we have a certain estimate for the responses that we receive before we get to close it, for example? Because
Gemma will
sending
know that better than I. I'm not sure because she's leading that subcommittee. But I don't think there's a specific threshold defined in terms of number of responses or dates as yet. But it will obviously, once it's gone out to everyone on the list, I think at that point we would say, right, we're not sending it to anyone else. And then I guess we just wait to see when the responses slow down.
Yeah. Thank you. Good to know.
I think one of the things that obviously it's very hard to know if we're missing groups that nobody here is aware of. I would hope by now that in ISCET we've got representation from pretty much everybody who's using clinical eye tracking, but you know, there might just be some discipline that nobody here is connected to. And so the part of the issue with this approach is that we've defined the groups we're going to send it to, and that therefore could still miss those groups. But we hope that by sending it to over 100 groups, you know, and getting the word out over the last year or so, it's going to be getting out to as many people as possible.
Do you have anyone else on that list or anything else anyone wants to add to that? Just thinking about where that's going.
I just thought that we would distribute, if there's a way that we would distribute it to, for example, the any committees or attendees, because many of them, and of course we highlight that those who are into clinical trials or clinical eye tracking, or like COGAIN, or these committees that are also in eye tracking. Within them, there are many people that work clinical. When I know certain people, I would email them, but then I thought maybe because we have, I don't know, Fred, what do you think about that? Like, do you have, for example, mailing list for people in ETRA, or should I, for example, email it to Mohammed Khamis or anyone there and add them to our Excel sheet?
Yeah, I think from the top down probably makes the most sense, because the one thing that we really have to be aware of is like we really just don't want it to get flagged as spam for everyone, but it's also, you know, like because it's not really just we're not asking about researchers who do clinical, you know, like clinical research. We're more asking about clinical application. We may end up getting a lot of kind of like false positives in that way. And so that's one of the things that, as the data comes in, maybe we should think about how we would want to evaluate whether or not, you know, like these respondents were appropriate. And of course, like if they've taken the time to answer the survey, it'd be nice to, of course, like acknowledge their work, regardless of if they kind of answered it somewhat erroneously. So there's actually a decent number of responses so far, right? Like I was actually impressed.
That is the next slide. Speaking of which, is that this one? So preliminary responses, 127 responses so far, including a range of roles. Performing eye tracking do or don't interpret results. There's some that don't perform eye tracking but do interpret the results. Professional bodies with members that perform eye tracking, and manufacturers. There's been a range of eye tracking devices used, but most responses so far report using the iLink, and then a range of professionals completing the survey. So most orthoptists are present, and that's likely related to distribution. One of the questions that I did have with that, Matt, is whether or not it would be worth people who are actually in some of those organisations following up. So, for example, I noticed that CN is the one communicating with Optometry Australia. I'm a member of Optometry Australia, so I'm wondering whether or not I should be following that up in the background as well.
I think that would be very helpful. Yes, I mean, a lot of the organisations here, when I've just sent them out to the kind of the mail@organisation.org, you know, that could just get dropped at the first post. So as many people as if anybody in ISCET is encouraged to send it to all their contacts. You know, it's not as long as those are relevant clinical contacts. So yes, the answer is yes. If you're within an organization and you haven't, you're expecting to see it and you haven't, then please do follow that up.
Yep. I don't know whether or not that would apply to Ransco as well, and just noting that Owen's still here. Would you be happy chasing that one up, Owen?
I can speak to Ransco people, but there are, to my knowledge, no ophthalmologists who are actually interested in eye movements. I think the Neuro-Ophthalmology Society, which is small, but nonetheless does have a few people who are interested. But there are some people in Ransco who would have interest, mainly because they're dealing with eye position as well, and measuring eye position is properly can be done with eye movement detectors as opposed to just prisms, and I guess it can be done more accurately. So I will speak to people at Ransco, and I'll speak to the Neuro-Ophthalmology Society as well.
Okay, so you'll cover NOSA. Have we got NOSA on the list, Matt?
So
Neuro-Ophthalmology Society of Australia.
Yes, they are. Yes, and it was sent to them in November.
Beautiful. Because I'm just, my thought is obviously if they're getting emails from people they don't necessarily know, that it may be going straight through to junk or similar and not. So just kind of checking that within our own organisations was my main thought in that space.
So within the subcommittee, we've tried to send to the organisations first of all that we have direct links to, but obviously there's only a handful of us in that subcommittee, and yeah, anyone else who can help would be great.
No, I realised that I'm in that subcommittee, but didn't send it to Optometry Australia, so I think I probably should follow that one up. And the other one that I'm wondering whether or not that should be on there, just with Owen mentioning eye position stuff, is whether or not ACBO or similar should be on there, which is our behavioural optometry group.
I think any clinical discipline where there is the potential for eye tracking to be used, even if we don't perceive that as currently being used very much, I think it would be worth sending it to, because part of the outcome of this will be to show where there might be, where eye tracking has been demonstrated in the research as being potentially beneficial, and it's just not being taken up by the clinicians. That is useful information for us anyway.
Yeah. Beautiful. So yeah, we welcome any other ideas for distribution. So if anyone thinks of anything afterwards, or if anyone who's watching this recording afterwards thinks of any ideas for distribution, please get in contact. Please do forward it on to the relevant and interested parties. So if these are people that you know, or obviously groups that you are part of, that would be great. And please encourage people to complete the survey if it's relevant, and the link for the survey can be found there. I've also got a QR code for that coming up in a couple of slides' time. So some of the preliminary results have been issues with eye tracking. Most of the comments so far relate to a lack of standardization of testing or interpretation. Very few have guidelines for clinical eye tracking, and very few have guidelines that are sufficient for clinical use. Many have made suggestions for what guidelines should be developed, and it's a bit too early to draw conclusions on this in terms of where we should be going. But I think that would form a nice dot point for the next meeting. And as a group, we're aiming to use this data to inform guideline development. So please do complete the survey. There is a QR code there. Please encourage its distribution. And if there are questions, please send an email through to Gemma or anyone on the committee. And that's all I have in that list there. So that's all organised. Does anybody else have any other business to discuss?
I just wanted to pick up on a point that Owen raised earlier about sending out the basically sending communications to the entire group. Actually, everybody who is on the ISCET mailing list is actually able to send on that mailing list as well. So the idea is it's supposed to be not just for communications from the committee, but you can, if you have something you'd like to share and you feel that it's relevant, then it's open for everyone to post to, so everyone can do that.
Okay, I think it was really my reticence as an editor of this not to be seen to be advertising something, which is
I understand.
Yeah, it's just a reticence rather than anything else. Yeah, but that's good. Thank you.
I'm happy to send it out afterwards. Anything else from anyone?
Oh, well, we had the membership on hold from last meeting, if I remember. We want to do all, we already discussed it, and it was already, yeah, we should proceed with it to have like a form, and also to proceed with this as a like kind of like a survey. Like also we would like to know who's involved in the ISCET, and we discussed that. But I was thinking to make a call for like a subcommittee who would be interested in or have experience actually in qualitative analysis, because I think that'll be good. But I just like not I'm thinking about like not a lot of people, because it's just like it should be more focused. But we would highly benefit if someone really have the time and would like to contribute as in a qualitative analysis as well, because I think that'll be
Qualitative analysis of members or a qualitative analysis of the survey?
well, we discussed that we will while having the form for the members, that we will get like the needed approvals, and we will also like to publish something on the who is interested in joining this emerging society, because and maybe after maybe 10 years from now or something, we would look into it again. But it was there in I think in the last meeting. But at that time we had the subcommittees working, and we were all involved in other parallel work. So this we couldn't take this ahead further. I mean,
I seem to recall at the last meeting there was discussion of it at some point, obviously, yes, having formal membership rather than the kind of informal at the moment way things are done. We would require somebody to kind of take on the role of membership secretary, so that we actually were able to make sure that data was, that involves then holding data on members. And so, and there's, by all means, that could happen at some point. But that would also something would be required. So, and there was a form developed, but it wasn't actually put out yet into the public. I think was that part of a committee meeting rather than a public meeting? I can't remember when we discussed it now.
I think I can't remember, but I remember I was I was like I should have taken further steps, but at that time we were writing for the ETRA paper. So I remember myself saying when we finish ETRA, and then yeah, and then but I can't remember the details, honestly. We can go back to the meeting.
I think it was the main meeting actually, and that was chaired by Robert. So maybe it would be worth just liaising with him just to double check what was decided at that point.
Yeah, but what I'm thinking about is just like making a call of but who would like to contribute with experience in.
So where would you see this work leading? What would you do with the results, as it were? Is it to inform the current survey? Is this as an adjunct to the survey information, so we know who's out there using eye tracking, and also just to kind of get to help to characterize the society in terms of who's involved?
Yeah, in that sense it works also, but the ones who really are active in the who joined, I think also these are the ones who will be in this specific survey because we noticed while what this came out, because while writing for ETRA, we noticed that we don't have. I'm learning Finnish, so I I stress the R. so just notice now. So while writing for ETRA, like we noticed that we don't have data on the members. Like we don't have any data, and and actually that was a section that we wanted to write on, but we just didn't have data. So this is how it came out. Like from which countries more, which continent, which discipline more, like I think that'll be also interesting.
Well, if you were going to lead a piece of work on that, I'm happy to help you with that. So you feel free to include me in anything.
Yeah, sure.
Would that come under, I guess, sort of formalizing this a little bit more and having a membership section, and then obviously dues to support the website and other aspects of this? I do think this is where we need to move into, but I guess it's that question of what would be collected and what jurisdiction would that get saved under, and sort of some of those privacy aspects as well. So whether or not people would want those to be open in terms of being able to connect with members, or whether or not that would be more of a closed aspect to it.
I think part of the discussion we had before, this was around, where does ISCET move to in the long run, seeing itself modeled a bit like ISEV is, where there is a formal membership and there's formal membership fees and so on. I think we were saying that at the time, this was a kind of a nascent society. There wasn't a lot of, there wasn't much reason for anyone to choose to join in order and then pay membership dues as such. And perhaps when ISET starts defining standards and things like that, then there may be more of a reason to, but we have to keep in mind, we want to get everybody involved. We want to try and actually have this be the voice of everybody who's doing clinical eye tracking and not start shutting people out on the basis of a membership fee. So I just would urge some caution in how we do that. I'm not saying we shouldn't at some point, but I think we want to be cautious that we
do we have a membership list without a fee to begin with?
That is certainly an option, yes. But then we still have to consider the data protection side of things. But yes. And of course, they only need to collect membership fees if there's actually something that costs money to do, which at the moment, the only current cost that we have is the website, which at the moment my university funded for the last year, but that runs out in March, which is probably worth pointing out that as of March, we may, unless we have alternative funding, we may lose the website.
This March, I mean,
This, yes, because it was March was when we had a 1 year subscription to WordPress and started in March. So yes.
What sort of cost do we need to raise?
It was around about £300 British. So what's that? And universally US dollars 380 for a 1 year subscription. We can, I will try to find money wherever possible, but if there are other options, then that's great, because it would be nice to see this continue to grow.
It would be willing to, I mean, definitely our institute probably be willing to consider a model where, you pay dues if you can or want to pay dues, and those things could go towards something like website. But the problem is that there is not necessarily an umbrella organization that exists yet to hold ISCET, all ISCET materials. And this is something that probably requires a formal organizational structure, nonprofit status, etc., right? All that good stuff. It's kind of a pain, and it's kind of time consuming. And so the question is who has the bandwidth to do it? I can certainly look at this group and the name written there and think of people who would be good leaders for it, but it has to be associated with a single individual that is persistent over time, at least some folks that are persistent over time. Otherwise, who's holds the registration, who kind of leads the all the tacky things that probably, if we like doing, we wouldn't be in research.
Yeah. I should say that I've actually applied at our university for research leave on the basis that if that were to be granted, then I would have a lot more time to spend on these aspects of things. So if that gets funded, then I'll be able to actually focus a lot more time on all those bits and pieces, that that would maybe bring ISCET to being a more formalized society if necessary.
Do you think that oh, sorry.
I was going to say that, but that obviously all depends on when it's felt that the society feels that the timing is right to do that kind of transition to a less to a more formalized structure. Because as you say, there's a lot of pieces of work that would need to be done to actually create a formal structure that can then be ongoing.
I think definitely before the organization produces
in-depth analysis and valuable insights from industry experts.
But sorry, what were you saying, Fred?
Oh, I think definitely before some type of formal product is built by ISCET, it should exist as a formal organization, I would say, because otherwise there's no assignment of that document to any type of kind of lasting structure.
I think possibly this is where Ruth Hamilton's involvement has been very helpful, because she's obviously president of ISEV, and she's able to guide us through the steps that have been used. Obviously, that was back in the 1950s when that was originally set up, so she wasn't present at the time. But you know, she has an understanding of the structures that they have in place for what is a very similar society with very similar aims, just in a slightly different clinical discipline. So, I think wherever we decide, you know, to change the structures, it's good to be able to ask her where, you know, what they do, and perhaps there might be other people in ISCET who have similar experiences as well. But it's not something that I'm familiar with.
Could we take their current membership form and use that as our sort of base structure for collecting that for ISCET?
Certainly could, yes. It's not publicly visible on the website. It was constructed, I recall, but it hasn't actually been put out there because we realized at the point of putting it out that we didn't know who was going to hold the data. So, but there is a form which could be.
Well, so it seems like it's always valuable to have a kind of website as a front-facing form for an organization, and so $380 is not prohibitive. At the same time, it's really just getting it through the bean counters at our institutions, and there has to be some method for accepting those funds, and so that's, I think, the challenge. I'm happy if, Matt, you can think of some way that it kind of like there's some receptacle to accept funds for this. But
Ruth Hamilton's suggestion from ISEV was they use something called Wild Apricot, which is an online platform specifically for societies such as this, which contains the membership database, it processes the fees and so on. So although you still have to have a formal organization to apply it to, it kind of handles all of that. Yeah, you know, all the data is secure and so on and so forth. So that's something worth looking into. But I recall that was something in the order of 5 times the cost per year at the current, you know, how we're doing it at the moment. So it is more expensive, but it does provide a framework.
Yeah, but I think like why don't we vote for a formal organization, like process starting as soon as we can? Because if we need to collect like for membership, because this subscription at least will expire in March, then we need to kind of, and we cannot collect except with an organization. So now it's like, I think I know it's a lot of work, but also we can make a call if someone would like to help from the members, from the current, I mean.
That probably would be the most direct way. I mean, Matt, if there's just some way, like someone in your business office who could just receive funds in general, and then we could just earmark it for the website. And then it's probably not a hard ask for me to go to my organization and take a part of that. And so I'm sure that there's lots of us who could spare 50, I want to say quid, but I don't actually know what a quid is. I think I saw it in a movie.
It's a pound, 1 British pound is a quid, yeah.
Okay. And if there was just a decent number of us, I mean, we could just split it and just ask our institution to send your institution a check for X, Y, and Z, and be very straightforward.
I can certainly ask whether that's something that could be arranged, at least for now, through Cardiff. But I've always been very keen that this is not seen as anything that's centralized at any one university, but clearly that's going to be necessary, at least in the outset. You know,
someone's holding the webpage.
In some way, there needs to be some centralization.
Right.
I just want to make sure we're cautious that we don't make that something that's mandatory for everyone, or if there's some way that we can continue to fund.
I do like Fred's suggestion of sort of opt-in in terms of dues, so whether or not we could collect all the members, and if you were happy to make a voluntary contribution of, we suggested 50 quid, but whatever we decide that is, to at least ensure that the website hosting is there. But there's that dual aim of collecting everyone. So by having that opt-in, we're still getting the names, and if they're not in a position to do that, or if the fees were going to be restrictive to joining and getting their voice, then I think that sort of solves both aspects. My question is sort of what next to make that happen.
And also, I think we have to be careful, because like a voluntary donation is not something that I could ask my institution to reimburse us, like me, for. And so it would have to be something along the lines of like a membership due for like this committee, or something silly like that, just to I just realized this is a recorded meeting, and so perhaps to go into the complexities of getting around our funding requirements is.
No, I think we're the same. So voluntary is probably the wrong word on that, but perhaps having an opt-in financial member versus just a general member. So making you a financial member with voting rights in ISCET, for example.
On the a voting member on the use of those funds, for instance.
Yeah, yeah.
Something along the lines of, I think that our institution actually understands that, like, we want to just pay some money in order for this thing to exist
Yeah.
because it's valuable from a research standpoint. And that's all from our side that's probably necessary, is just someone to say, like, the total cost per individual, given that we have these many individuals, is this amount. And then, for us to send the money that way.
That seems very sensible. Thank you, Rasha, for raising this now rather than, if we waited till March, we would have been in a bit of a problem. So that's really good that we've, I'll raise that now with our finance department and see if we can, at least have this as a way of doing things for the time being. And then, as the society grows, things may change, but that might get us through.
Yeah. I'm happy that you might find more time. That's great. Let's hope that.
Well, fingers crossed. We'll see. We'll see. Certainly, my school was supportive, but I have to wait for the university's response on that. But that would buy me out of teaching for a year, and one of the things I'd be able to focus on would be growing this.
Yeah. Now, one last thing. Also, it was related to the. We wanted to do some advocacy or some not advocacy, like some like we want people to know more about the society. So we published the paper, but then also. I don't know where we stopped in having a LinkedIn page and these stuff because I think that was also for the subcommittee of ours and we already said that we need to be more known, so I don't know why we didn't proceed with it.
So maybe it's worth communicating with Siwan. I'm not sure if she knew, because of course she's the communications secretary, so it might be worth
I got confused whether it was
on to
clear or maybe that we needed also to discuss it again. I didn't know whether it was time wise or whether you wanted us to for me it was clear, but yeah. So okay, I'll contact her.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, so Rasha, you'll contact Siwan to ask about the LinkedIn page. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so outcomes out of this meeting, Rush is going to contact Suan about further advertising and supporting of the committee. Matt, you're going to have a chat with Cardiff around the sort of finances and how we might organise dues for the sort of current stage of where things are at. I'm going to send out the Frontiers call to the ISCET members on the mailing list because we're happy with that. If anyone more generically, as sort of an outcome of this, has distribution options or other ways to send out the survey, we are encouraging further survey things. I think that's all of the to-do items at the end of this meeting. Have I missed anything, Rasha?
That I will also call for someone interested in or experienced in qualitative analysis for also when we settle whether the membership is going to be paid or not. But anyways, to proceed with this.
Perfect. And you'll send that out to the ISCET membership? You'll send that out to the mailing list?
Yeah.
Yep, perfect.
So I don't know if you were going to mention about the timing of the next meeting. Was that something you were going to bring up later, Elder? Or?
That's exactly where I was going now. So next meeting, I obviously won't be hosting the next meeting because it will rotate. That should be in a couple of months' time.
And is it my turn now? Because
so yeah, it's Europe, Africa. So yes, that's you for the next one. I just wanted to think about when that would be. I obviously once the survey results are in, then really the proper work of ISCET can begin, where we start to actually define protocols. So I think that could then we could see quite a large, I'd imagine quite a large jump in the number of people attending these meetings, and obviously then it becomes a bit more complex. But yeah, Rashi, you might want to have a think about whether we wait a fixed amount of time or whether we wait until the survey, until Gemma calls the end of the survey and says, right, we've got some proper results to discuss now. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sorry.
So that was to Rasha really in terms of the next meeting. What?
Well, it depends on when we will go. When we'll close the survey. So we can leave it open, and then if there's something else, we can call in Yani before the survey is closed, or if it's soon enough, we would then wait until it's closed. I'm not with closing the survey like very soon, because I'm always hopeful that also the round of reminders, actually sending people the reminders, usually gets more contributions. I don't know, or at least that's my experience. But anyway, we haven't been meeting like I think when was the last meeting? It was before ETRA. It was just like before.
It was a long time ago. It was in March, actually, last March.
Yeah,
So
it was
it's been a long gap. It's been a very long gap.
yeah. But I think a
I
lot
think
was
prior to that, it was roughly every 6 weeks. But I'm also don't think we want to be having meetings just for meeting's sake. You know, maybe it is worth. I agree that it's worth waiting until we have results in, and then we actually can have something solid to discuss.
yeah. I can't decide now when, so we can go with this option, or we leave it open until like maybe email everyone.
I think one of the things to be aware of is obviously with the holiday period coming up, a lot of people will be away or will be, not functioning in at least our neck of the woods till sort of the end of January. And I'm not sure that we'd be wanting her to close the survey any earlier than that anyway. So whether or not we looked at a Feb meeting as the next meeting, I'm kind of throwing that out there. But just to be aware of the sort of holiday period and the fact that it's summer here, so we will be offline for a bit.
I think
I think
just to put something on the calendar, in my mind, makes a lot of sense because even where we are right now with the 107 survey respondents, it's actually pretty considerable. And so I think that if the subcommittee were to meet someplace in between now and let's say mid-February or sometime in March, and just like organize whatever data that we have just so we can get a preliminary look, and that'll already give us sense of like how this data is going to get organized, and then it'll also make sense, kind of give some guidance on whether or not we need to do another blast to follow up on areas that we may have missed. So I think it's always valuable to just open up the data a little bit earlier than later, as long as there's no prohibition against it from an analytical standpoint or an IRB standpoint. I think that just one subcommittee meeting in between, someone who's kind of like taking a cursory look at the data, and then in our next meeting, I mean, it doesn't have to be closed. It doesn't have to be done. It just has to be kind of like a intermediate step. And I think that even February or March would be a decent time for that.
A subcommittee meeting at say the end of January, and then looking to have the next ISCET meeting say mid-Feb.
I think I was already thinking Feb before Fred speaks, because we have the March also decision about the website, so maybe we would like to meet in February, mid-Feb, or that would be good. I think that's reasonable.
Did you want to pick a date now or send one through?
I should have made my mind, because I knew that I'm the next one. Well, okay, just like it's Fridays okay generally, or we want to keep it on Thursday? Like, was there a certain day that people like more? I can't remember.
I think the most important is that it's convenient for you, Rasha. And so
Really? Okay, thank you. That's very thoughtful. Okay.
And then everything can just be organized, like people who can, it's the same thing with all of these meetings, right? If you can make it, you make it.
Well, the 14th, for example. Does that say is there any occasion on the 14th of February?
Oh, Valentine's Day for ISCET.
I felt so. Okay, so no. Okay.
I mean, you don't love eye tracking that much?
Okay, then what? 7th is early?
No, I think that's good. 7th sounds good.
It's not even mid-Feb. Okay. Okay. Yeah,
it might be worth just making sure that Gemma gets to feed in on this as well, because she's overseeing the subcommittee and will know a bit more about how that fits in terms of the ability for the subcommittee to meet first and so on. But we could pencil that in for now.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Maybe to check in with the key people who absolutely have to be there to present the data. I think that makes sense. So maybe we don't have to make a decision right now. Just communicate offline and pick a time, and we'll come if we can. I'm sorry, I have to jump, but it was great seeing all of you.
Great to
We
see you,
can-
Fred.
You can just say like that, book your calendars for a meeting in February and we will confirm the date later or something like that. And that's it.
Rush,
Other
you're
than
in contact with Gemma, aren't you? Because you're on the subcommittee. So maybe do you want to just have a chat with her and just check that that suits her too?
Okay. No, I have
You want me to put you in touch?
people to communicate. Yeah, that'll be great.
I'll do that. I'll do that. Okay. Yeah.
Perfect.
Got it.
Okay, do we have anything else? No? Okay, great. I think this has been very successful and we'll call this to a close. Thank you everyone for your attention today.
Thank you. All right. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.